Hi, everybody. Cheers. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Greetings. As a matter of fact, if I'm saying cheers, let me say it properly. Cheers to everybody. It's a gin martini. I think this is going to be a lot of fun tonight. Let me welcome my partner in crime, TC.
It's a big world to explore. From our first foods
The hell was that?
to our first steps. So
Wait, is that like my rally music? Because I'm kind of excited about that. Cheers.
Wow, you broke. Cheers to you. You broke out the hoops tonight.
Right?
Yeah. Nice. Look at that. All right.
Only the best for your political cartoonists.
I'll tell you a funny thing. Someone this weekend asked me about my work.
Okay.
True story. They asked me about my work, and I said, I've got this daily newsletter, and the newsletter reaches a lot of people, and we've added editorial cartoonists, and every day 20 aggregated links, the poll question. Yeah, I go into this whole pitch about the newsletter, and this individual who's like 1 degree of separation says to me, I thought you had a radio show. I'm like, no, I do. I talk for 15 hours a week on radio, and I have a CNN program, but this newsletter, I've got to tell you about this newsletter. You know what a passion project this is of mine.
I do. It's really, really special. It means an enormous amount to you. You work very hard at it, and you keep adding things to it, which is kind of why we're here.
Yeah. And I mean, I'll discuss the background as to how we get where we are tonight with our 3 special guests, but it's evolved over a period of a few short years. And I do it, I think, for all the right reasons, because for so long I've said people need to have a mixed media diet. And TC, I spend an inordinate amount of time reading in for every day's program. I don't really speak for a living. I read for a living. I have to know what the hell to say when I get on the air. And it was an intern of ours years ago who said, Blake McGill, who said, you ought to have a newsletter. And I said, that sounds like a hassle I don't need. There's too much on my plate. She offered to help launch it. And it's just become a thing. Yeah. And I'm so grateful for the audience having responded to it. And like, no bullshit, a 77% open rate is off the fucking charts. The industry standard is 20%. We do better than Axios. We do better than the Times. We do better than the Washington Post. People don't just sign up for this newsletter. They really open and they read it and they appreciate it. So
what people are going to be asking me about, which I have to bring up, is your sartorial splendor.
Oh my God.
What's going on here before you get to your cartoonist, which is, like, you're about to kick me out, I know, but come on, what's happening?
Okay. Truth be told, 40 minutes and 3 videos and a cold sweat. I've never tied a bow tie. In fact, this is like somebody gave me a Churchill bow tie as a gift and it came with instructions, but I can't read them. They're too small.
Oh dear.
So I've been in the bathroom looking at a video and looking at myself in the mirror and trying to make it right. Hope it looks okay.
It looks great. You got that. You got like a purple velvety wallpaper and handcuffs behind you. So we're going to have to talk about that at some point. Maybe not right now, but at some point.
Those handcuffs behind me brought home fugitive Ira Einhorn. Now that's a hell of a background story. And the U.S. Marshal, who was once a legal client of mine, gave them to me as a gift, and I appreciate it. Coming home from France, remember, he murdered Holly Maddox, a young, beautiful co-ed from Texas who was at Penn, and this, hero of Earth Day murdered her and put her body in a steamer trunk, and those cuffs brought him back. Can I show you one more thing, and then I'll say thank you?
Yes.
Okay. You remember Beth Pratt and P-22? You know how I love that cougar out in Southern California?
Sure. Oh boy, you're reaching for it's a poster.
No, it's a photograph.
Wow.
That's the Hollywood sign in the background.
And he's no longer with us, right?
He's no longer with us. Right. I got to get it framed.
Oh my goodness, what a treasure.
Yeah. Hey, TC, wait, stick around for one more second.
Okay.
I want to thank Parks Casino. I want to thank our friends at Parks Casino. I want to thank our friends at Baldini Communications for sponsoring all of our work on YouTube. I want to thank the boys at Dr. Marty's. Love that dog food. Radioactive Media. I'm looking at you, the Pollock brothers, good guys who are out there in Orange County, California. And I love Dr. Marty's sponsorship of the newsletter. And then let's give a shout out for Dan, who is not with us because he's on duty tonight.
That's
He's
right.
at the firehouse.
He's at the firehouse.
Yeah. So our producer, Dan, Radio Dan, is literally on call tonight in the burbs of Washington, D.C., could get a call and go out and save somebody's life.
So he couldn't be here. Phenomenal.
He couldn't be here. We appreciate Alice Herrick, who, now look at that. That's her.
Truly balanced delivered daily.
Alice is the editor of the newsletter and holds, or used to hold, the world record for high wire walking in high heels.
That's right.
In high heels, and we appreciate her. We appreciate Austin McCain, who is the editor on weekends of the newsletter. Big shout out for Joe Ellis, who is our digital media manager and keeps everything flowing in the correct direction. Thank you, Joe. We appreciate you, and Elise Siegel, who is just a consultant on everything. And to the boys over at Creative Outfit, PJ and Daniel and Randy, and tonight's director is Aleko. We love everybody. So thank you for all your good work and for putting this together tonight, because we're about to have some fun.
And on that note, have a fantastic night. I'll be watching.
TC, I'll see you in the morning. Don't have too many of those.
Bye.
All right. See you, TC. So July 12, here's the quick background. July 12, I'm doing my read-in. Washington Post has a story by Michael Kavna. And the story says, well, there's the story. 3 Pulitzer Prize winning cartoonists are let go in one shocking day. And the art that accompanies the story in the Washington Post is from Jack Oman from the Sacramento Bee. And I read the story, and I, as a matter of fact, there was a quote from Jack in this. It says, speaking as president of the Association of American Editorial Cartoonists, Oman told the Post by phone, this is just another brick in the wall of continuing layoffs in the field, but we haven't had 3 Pulitzer Prize winning cartoonists go out the door in the same day before. I've always been a fan of editorial cartoons. I mean, I grew up in the Philly burbs admiring the work of Tony Auth and Sidney Wilkinson. And so I asked TC to invite Jack Oman on the radio program to talk about the big picture of what's going on with editorial cartoonists. Why are they in jeopardy? Why don't people seem to share my passion for their work? And Jack was my guest. He was very engaging, obviously a personality. And I conducted the interview, and that was it. And then I remember that later that day, I'm sitting there and I say to myself, wait a minute, it's like I had an epiphany. He's no longer writing and drawing in the way that he had for the Sacramento Bee and for others, although he's thankfully doing other work. I wonder if he'd be willing to draw exclusively on a particular day of the week for the newsletter. Reached out for him, had a hilarious conversation. I think we got along well. And he's like, yeah, I'm totally into this. So okay, now I'm thinking, well, if we have Jack, maybe we can supplement the bench here and add to it. Rob Rogers' work was familiar to me. He's a fellow Pennsylvanian. He had called the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette home for a long time, and then famously, and he can tell you the story, got fired. Why did he get fired? Because the new ownership of the Post didn't like the content that he was drawing, specifically with regard to former President Donald Trump. So I reached out for him, and Rob said, yeah, I have interest in doing this. Sure, why not? Okay, we need somebody else to round out the bench and maybe provide a little bit of ideological balance. Steve Breen of the San Diego Union had a similar fate in that he was at the Union, I think from 2001 until 2023 when he departed from the Union. And I've always loved the work that he has done. I reached out for Steve Breen, and voila, here we have 3 highly touted, highly regarded, Pulitzer Prize winning, Pulitzer finalists. I mean, there's just a lot of recognition that each of the 3 of them have received, and they're now affiliated with the newsletter, and I'm just thrilled. So here they are in no particular order: Jack Oman, Rob Rogers, and Steve Breen. And our connection is working, which is, there they all are. Hey guys, thank you so much for being here. Jack, let me start with you. That's how it happened, right? You came on as a radio guest, and then I called you up and we had a conversation. I'm like, let's make this work.
Absolutely. And honestly, Michael, you were a lifesaver to me at that time. And I have two main gigs, you and the San Francisco Chronicle, where I'm a columnist and a cartoonist on as a contributor. So I thank you profoundly.
Well, you've also played a leadership role in the organization that I just referenced. What's the deal? Like, why all of a sudden are editorial cartoonists seeming to feel the brunt of cutbacks that have long been happening in newspapers?
Well, there are multiple aspects to this. I think the first one, you could see this coming about 5 years ago, where the cascade really started. First of all, the New York Times stopped running cartoons because their New York Times international editor ran a cartoon about Netanyahu that lit people up. And so the publisher of the New York Times, who I actually worked with at the Oregonian when he covered Multnomah County, killed cartoons in the Sunday section. And then the Washington Post has done a really good job of diminishing the role of editorial cartoonists on their staff. They did not hire a full-time staff cartoonist after Tom Towles resigned in a couple of years ago. Gannett stopped running cartoons. They stopped running opinion. Several other major news organizations had really diminished their editorial pages to the point where there was no space for us. Now, intriguingly, on my newspaper, I was leading the newsroom in page views. And I think that that's a rather common occurrence. I know that there have been a lot of things that have happened, and I can't comment specifically about my former organization. But I can tell you that the industry trend has been just brutal, and so many headwinds that we've really have had a hard time recovering and have had to basically come up with a way to forge different audiences. And so you are the tip of the sword of this, Michael, and some other websites have retained cartoons as well. But as the two-time president of this organization, I thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I know that Rob and Steve do as well.
Rob, your situation was rather unique, right? I mean, here you are drawing the then president of the United States, and the new ownership is not happy, and they let you know that.
Right. Yeah. My publisher is the same publisher I had for 25 years, but I was always worried about stories that I'd heard from other newspapers where they got a new publisher and he was more either left or right leaning, depending on which way the cartoonist was leaning, and they ended up having trouble and sometimes getting laid off. But that wasn't the case for me. I had the same publisher for the whole time I was there. It's just that once Donald Trump entered the picture, came down the escalator, I like to say my publisher fell in love, because I don't know, I have any other explanation for it. He became intrigued with him and decided he started to try to get the editorial page warmed up to Trump. And of course, none of the writers wanted to really do anything to to sort of propel Trump. So I lasted another 2 years, but my editor, the editorial page editor, ended up leaving because he didn't want to endorse Trump, and because it went against everything we had written for. We were a very progressive, liberal paper, and it went against everything we had written for the last 50 years. So yeah, I lasted a little bit longer, but he made it difficult for me. And in the last 3 months, I had several cartoons killed. In fact, the last week that I was drawing for the paper, they killed all 6 in a row. And
wow,
that was kind of the end of it. Yeah.
Steve Breen, do you all know each other? I mean, I imagine it's a small community.
Yeah, we do. And let me just say, Michael, thank you so much for what you've done for editorial cartooning. But it's so cool to be on with these two guys because I've known both of them for years, and I would say we're buddies. And
yeah,
and these guys from day one, from the first editorial cartooning convention I attended, were super supportive, almost like much older brothers.
Wait a minute.
What?
They're awesome. They're awesome. They're awesome guys, awesome cartoonists, and I've always looked up to them. Okay, I want to just mention a little bright spot in editorial cartooning. I mean, we had Jack getting the San Francisco Chronicle gig recently, and this week I have some news to announce. I was just hired by a local nonprofit investigative news site
Nice.
to continue doing my cartoons.
Great.
Awesome. It's great.
It's called
Very good.
iNewsSource in San Diego, and they've never had a cartoonist. They've never had any opinion content, but I'm going to start doing it for them.
Nice.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your work. Jack Oman, the Lennon McCartney thing. Like, is it the image that comes first, or is it the idea and then, okay, how am I going to draw this? For example, we're showing one of yours right now. This is about the indictment of Senator Bob Menendez. Talk to me the backstory of that.
Well, I always say that editorial cartooning isn't a drawing job; it's a writing job. One of my friends who was an a reporter at the Oregonian back in the day said that political cartoons are editorials in haiku form. And so I think, frankly, my main skill set is the ability to come up with this small phrase and distill it. And I'm always working backwards from that phrase or pun or turn of phrase. And I'm not thinking about how can I draw a cool eagle or tank today. I'm thinking about how do I get to that 7-word or 2-word or 8-word thing?
Well, by the way, I think, and you correct me if I'm wrong, you tend to use, this is not a critique, this is just an observation. You tend to use more words than either Rob or Steve. Is that fair?
I don't know. I mean, it depends on the cartoon, I guess. I've certainly try not to get overly wordy, but certainly a Sunday cartoon I do for the Chronicle is very wordy and, deliberately so. I don't know. Rob is he labels everything. Come on.
Well, let me go to Rob Rogers and put something up. Pennsylvania's junior United States Senator is John Fetterman. Yeah. I love this. Hopefully you can see it, Rob. Can you speak to what's going on here?
I can see it. In fact, since we're doing this live, I pulled out a couple of these cartoons. So in case you're interested in how I work, this is the original ink drawing. Sorry, my chair is all squeaky, but this is the original ink drawing, and I work on that. First I do a sketch in my sketchbook, then I do a pencil onto the board here, and then I ink this. And then once this is scanned in, then I do the color, and you can put that other one back up, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I've met John Fetterman several times. He did a couple of fundraisers for me when I was at the Toonseum. So he's a great guy. I like him a lot. And it was, it was obviously very sad what happened to him. Was it last year or the year before? Now I'm forgetting, but I think last year. But this was about his dress code. I mean, we've known him as the mayor of Braddock, and he has tattoos on his arms, and he's always been an unusual politician in terms of Western Pennsylvania. So we've known about the hoodies and the shorts for years, and now, like, the rest of the country gets to see him wearing it.
Steve Breen, I had David McCullough, the Pulitzer Prize winner, on my radio program. Actually, I remember in studio several years ago, I think when he published 1776. And I said to him, how long does it take you to write? And he said to me, you're asking the wrong question. The right question is, how long do I think before I write? I'm sure that has some resonance with you, right?
Totally. Yeah. The more I know about a topic, the better I'm going to be. And the more passion I have for a topic, the better off I'm going to be. But the more time I have to think about topic A or B, it's just, you're better off. That said, a great idea could come to you in a flash without thinking too much, So it does depend. But generally, I love a lot of time to sit and think, let my brain marinate in that news, that I've read or I've watched on TV.
I've got something of yours that I want to put on the screen. It couldn't be more timely. Take a look at that. Talk to me about what's going on from your perspective.
Well, I wanted to do something. I guess I was thinking in terms of puns and, not to be funny on such a serious topic, but I was thinking of the word strip, and I thought of a strip of paper. Then I thought of a strip of fabric, and then I thought, oh, Molotov cocktail. So, tried to keep it simple and clean.
This subject is so hot. I find myself being very measured. I got a hot mic in front of me for 15 hours a week on radio, an hour on CNN. Everybody seems to be measuring every word that comes out of my mouth relative to Israel and the situation in Gaza. Steve, do you feel that as a cartoonist?
Totally. Yeah, I do. And I think Rob Rogers did such a great cartoon on the Middle East, and I don't think he did it for the newsletter. With the two sides, Rob, on each side of that on that line. With the Palestinians, and then we're not Hamas. Did you explain that one?
I had sort of the scene of Gaza that had been bombed out, and you have Palestinians on one side and Israel Jews on the other side, and there's a dividing line, and the Gazans are holding sign that says "We are not Hamas," and it's a family, and then on the other side, the Jewish family standing in the rubble is holding another sign saying "We are not Netanyahu," and just sort of, I mean, I think that the problem that some people have had with some of the cartoons I've done is this idea of making some sort of equivalency argument that because when Trump made that argument about Charlottesville, we all said, hey, good people on both sides, but I think it's true here. I mean, I do think that there are innocent people on both sides who are being affected, and they have nothing really to do with those in power. And so that's what I was trying to say.
Jack, I thrive on the hostile reaction. On my CNN program, I respond in real time to social media. And the way that it works is that TC is monitoring, she knows me, she knows what I'm going to respond to. She's the one who makes the selection. She knows never to pick out a compliment. She identifies them and then sends them to the producers in New York. And then very quickly they put them up on the screen. And I don't have any idea of what's coming, but I enjoy responding to criticism. If you're, the most viewed at your newspaper and what you're doing, I'm curious as to how do you respond to criticism?
Well, I have to say, one of the things I like about working at the Chronicle is that I don't have an email address there. So I'm blissfully ignorant of all reaction, honestly. Sometimes I'll look at the comments at the Chronicle, and it's just like, yeah, that's my email. So I'm from Minnesota, man, and I did live in Pennsylvania. I lived in Chester County for a year and a half, so I'm hip to your scene. I used to go to Wilmington with my mother to go to the fabric store. But I did when Joe Biden was on the city council, probably, or maybe he was governor of Delaware back then when he was in his 50s. But I just don't dig that kind of interpersonal reaction. I just don't. I hate it. I don't like people angry with me. I want to bake you a hot dish and take you down to the church basement, and these guys know me. I'm a very, nice guy and like having my friendships. And I do not thrive on negative energy from readers at all. I want to be told that I'm clever.
Let me go to more Jack Oman. This is you, a Senate roll call, obviously addressing the age issue. Bunions, Metamucil, Walkers, Cane. I. Speak to me about this.
Well, our late U.S. Senator just died a couple of weeks ago at the age of 89. And, she was probably, God rest her soul, she was getting a lot of heat here and nationally for her, frankly, inability to serve. And it was, we all know 85-year-olds at the golf course, and they're sharp. And we always say they're sharp as tacks, but they shouldn't be in the U.S. Senate, And do I think Biden is too old to be president? Well, he's very close to being too old to be president. He's a great 81. But I worked in politics for a couple of years prior to becoming a political cartoonist. I was an advance man for a young congressional candidate. He was 29, 30 years old, and this was in southern Minnesota. And you're up at 5 a.m. and you're going to bed at midnight. And this is a young person's game.
Right.
And so, is it reductionist? Is it ageist? Probably, but
For-
my view.
For this topic, I found it was kind of helpful to have Mitch McConnell experiencing his problems at the same time Feinstein was having her problems, so you could put them together so that you didn't look ageist and sexist by just going after Feinstein.
I handled it the same way on radio.
Yeah.
Rob Rogers, Elon Musk, a recent focus of yours. Let's put that up on the screen. Love this. Talk to me, Rob, about what's going through your mind as you're drawing it.
Well, I obviously, as cartoonists, we always try to think of, well, what metaphor defines this person or this person? And with Musk, it's, his rocket ships or maybe his Tesla.
Now that's a wordy cartoon, Michael.
That's right.
You call me wordy. I mean, you forgot
I meant
to put
it as a
something on his
compliment.
forehead. Yeah. See, now
Yeah,
we're going to
really.
critique each other. What you want is us to rip each other's work apart.
No.
Okay.
Well, I will say that it was easier to put an X on the front of the bomb than it was like the word Twitter. But I could have just put the bird, I guess. But
You should have him dropping the bird. Just
yeah, really.
Okay.
That's a different cartoon, I think. But no, I mean, I just felt like, he was talking about Ukraine, and he was saying that, he had some satellites that were being used for communication by the Ukrainian intelligence for the battle. And he, at one point, decided he didn't like what they were about to do. So he pulled the satellites, the connections, and got himself sort of involved. And his excuse was, well, I don't want to start World War III. And of course, he has sort of started World War III online in terms of, all the hate that that is happening on formerly known as Twitter.
I love the car. I'm not sure what to make of the man. I started out as a huge fan, and over time, the more that he's spoken, the more that I've felt a disconnect from what he's had to say. Steve Breen, maturity issues, hysterical. This got a lot of reaction. They each have their own maturity issues, right?
Yeah. Right. This is going back to the moral equivalency. I know that Trump is a worse person for leading the country, but I couldn't resist this cartoon. It was it. Sometimes they come to you in a flash. This was one of those that just kind of came to me when I was thinking of age, and then I thought another word for age is maturity issues. Boom, just wrote itself.
Steve, I have this sort of Larry David image of all three of you, that you've always got a tablet in your pocket so that if something comes to you, you're in a position that you can make sure that you remember it. Am I wrong?
No, I don't have a tablet, but I will speak an idea into my iPhone or text it to myself sometimes. I think some songwriter said, like, the good ideas will stick with you. But I do sketch a lot. I do sketch a lot in my free time.
I mean, I'm constantly looking for radio content, and the best material that I think that I've delivered as I've been doing this doesn't come from the front page. It comes from life. Something happens to me in my real life. When our kids were younger, they were a wealth of material because things would be said at the dinner table, and I'd be like, oh my God, I've got to talk about this. Is it the same in the world of being an editorial cartoonist?
I think so.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a little pad in my pocket, but I do have a sketch pad that I sort of carry around, and I write stuff down. But I have sort of had thoughts right before going to bed, and then I do have to scramble. I'm like, oh God, I gotta write this down because the next morning it'll be gone. That has happened. But
that pad in your pocket, I thought you were just glad to see us. Had to be funny at some point here, right?
Yeah.
Of course. Wait, I thought we already were.
Oh, absolutely.
Jack, I love the conspiratorial cartoon that you drew, the Oliver Stone thought bubble. There it is. Steve Bannon and Roger Stone recruited Oppenheimer and Clarence Thomas to get RFK Jr. to ask Barbie to shut down Anthony Fauci and George Soros to manipulate the Jews and the Chinese to vaccinate Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert against their will. And the wife or the partner sits there and says, my God, I am missing Oliver Stone.
That was the first cartoon I did for you, and that is a wordy cartoon. I guess I just decided to do a column and illustrate it. But, my apologies. I've been trying to get a little terser with you the last couple of weeks.
But it's so true, right? That we live in such a nutty age.
Well, I'm 63 years old, and I watched this world become more and more conspiracy obsessed over the years. And when I was of course, we're all around. Green, of course, as a child, but growing up as a child during
Maturity.
the 60s. Well, right. Oh, he's very mature. But growing up as a child during the 60s, we had our fathers. My father was a Bronze Star winner in the Korean War and, voted for Ike. And, my mom was a Mad Men mother and stayed at home. And we saw this Believe It to Beaver template, that we lived. And nothing was questioned. And then I remember my father just turning on the Vietnam War and saying, Johnson was, using conspiratorial tones, really, and that was so weird to hear from my PhD war hero father. And then the Kennedy assassination was the backdrop for a lot of crazy conspiracy theories that, frankly, 99.9% of which are ridiculous. And there, I always say there are very real conspiracies out there, but the ones everybody talks about aren't conspiracies. Like, you can talk about oil companies, you can talk about, banking, you can talk about all sorts of actual conspiracies that are going on out there. And so, we're the generation that got marinated in conspiracy theory. And then Oliver Stone basically got paid to propagate conspiracy theory. So I think I'm not much of a conspiracy guy, but it's just so much worse. And then when you have this idiot who had been president for 4 years with these people who, the denial of objective reality. Now I'm going to have a stroke. My wife's waving her hand. Stop. But, it's really gotten terrible. And when you're a cartoonist and you're supposed to exaggerate things, like, where's the exaggeration?
The difference, Jack, is that, back in the day, conspiracy would be spread verbally, and now it's the touch of the send key, and it's like it's gone, and you can't get back the facts.
Well, you worked in radio for decades, right? I mean, there weren't a lot of guys doing that in the 60s, right? And I mean, I'm not a huge student of the history of talk radio, but wow, did that sell? And listen, I listened to Art Bell. I loved Art Bell,
right?
And stuff like that. And who cares if it's true, right? And then, so maybe talk radio also kind of lit the fuse on a lot of this stuff, because that was instantaneous.
Absolutely. No. And by the way, I would argue that with Art Bell, you knew what you were getting. And I loved it too, because I was doing morning drive and I would come in and I would be in a studio at 5 o'clock in the morning, still listening to him signing off as I was about to embark on my own shift. And it was intoxicating, but it was not the mainstream product. Now it's become the mainstream product.
Even I listened to Limbaugh all the time when I was in my 30s. I have to say that, and I can hardly believe I'm saying this, Michael, that he didn't make stuff up. He distorted stuff, or he bent it to his view, but like, he didn't just make facts up out of whole cloth, which is what these guys are doing now. Is that a fair statement?
Well, he was also, I mean, you would know because of geography where you are. I mean, when he popped in Sacramento, he was a great entertainer. He was funny as hell. I watched him in Philadelphia speak without notes for 90 minutes at the Academy of Music, which is formerly the home of the Philadelphia Orchestra. And he came out on stage and he was captivating. And what I think his critics never appreciated about him was the hold that he had on an audience based on wit and entertainment. I would argue he got darker later in his career.
Yeah,
you know, the bits
he
were
had to.
gone and it wasn't funny and it took a turn.
No, but in 1992, man, he was funny.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Rob Rogers, we've all seen the religious, zealot who's got this. Yeah, I love this. Come on. This is hysterical. Normally it's like the end is near, but you took a twist with it.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes we, Jack will tell you that editorial cartoonists are notorious for using cliches. In fact, he did a panel at one of our conventions about all the cliches different cartoonists use. I think he lost a few friendships that year, but
dozens.
He showed examples, But there's sometimes when it's the right thing. You feel like this is the right cliche to use, and so the end is near. Just felt like with these old guy, with the beard and everything, always looking like Father Time or some homeless guy walking down the street, and it's sort of that old New Yorker style of doing a punchline. But and because this was about the senators and congressmen who are, senators in this case, who are too old, and the maturity issue.
I have never done that metaphor, but I cannot quit the Titanic. And in fact, I did one.
You did one this week. Yeah,
I did, and I loved every second of it, man. Just like the smokestacks with the trunks and the icebergs labeled stuff, and I was like, I put a Titanic cartoon in my Pulitzer nomination. I was a finalist for in 12, and I was like, no, don't. I guess probably why I didn't win. But
let me ask this, Rob. How often? Well, actually, let me back up. I watch a tremendous amount of cable news to stay in the loop. When I leave you all tonight, I'll make sure that I'm watching everybody just to know all different perspectives. I don't listen to talk radio because I've been in the position before where someone says something and I say, oh, shit, I was going to do a commentary on that. And then I get all twisted thinking someone will think that I took that idea from a competitor. How, do you pay attention to one another? Do you see something and you say, oh, Steve Breen did that, Jack Oman did that, I guess I can't do that?
Yeah, when I'm coming up with an idea, I try not to look at anything online, but invariably we all are sort of working with the same, vocabulary and the same news stories. And so we end up dipping our toe in the same water. So yeah, it happens all the time. And, but yeah, so there's this balance. You have to kind of look at other people's work to make sure you're not, doing something that they did a week ago, but at the same time, you don't necessarily want to see what they did, that morning or that day, because it might interrupt what you're doing. So I don't know. It's tough. It's tough. It's very tough though, because, there are times when you see an idea and it's not just about not copying it, but you see one and it just ruins your day because you think, I can't come up with anything better than that. That was a great cartoon.
Yeah.
I'm going to bed.
It kills you. Yeah.
You want to say something about that, Steve?
No, I agree. If you see a cartoon that's a home run on a topic, it kind of takes the wind out of your sails because it's like, how can I beat that?
Mm-hmm.
But I did a cartoon that I just loved. I thought it was so great and simple. A couple years ago, it was Putin with a little "I voted" lapel on, and I was so proud of it. The American flag, I voted, and then like 2 weeks later, I saw that Clay Bennett had done it, like in some roundup or something, and he had done it like 2 weeks before I had done it. And so this sense of panic comes over you, like, oh, are people going to think that I took it from him? It was also on the cover of Time magazine. They also used the same image on Time magazine, which I did.
I wrote a commentary last Wednesday or Thursday night for CNN, and before I did the show, one of my colleagues sent me something from a Wall Street Journal writer of a similar theme, and I thought, oh shit, like now what do I do? Because I genuinely wrote it on my own, and I had the same concern. Steve Breen, this is hysterical. Biden, his time, so accurate as well. I mean, come on, Gavin Newsom is suddenly with President Xi and trampling over kids on a basketball court in China. Of course he wants to run.
Yeah. Well, okay, speaking of cliches and using stuff, I'm not the first cartoonist to do a Biden his time cartoon, but no one else has ever done it this way. So I figured it was okay to do it, especially with Newsom.
That's an interesting point, where cartoonists, when a big story comes up, the smart cartoonists, the top cartoonists, well, and maybe the dumb ones too, they all get kind of the same idea.
Yeah.
Right off the bat. It's like, well, everybody's going to do X, right? Particularly, like, I don't do obit cartoons, generally speaking. I'm not saying I haven't, but generally speaking. And you know how those things are going to come out. Mickey Mantle dies and there's a home run ball going over the pearly gates or whatever the hell it is. And so you're always like, oh God, that's going to be the idiotic first idea that everybody's going to do.
Right.
And there are these, tropes. I mean, they always said that there were like 8 basic novel plots. There are 8 basic political cartoon approaches. But it's true,
Well,
and we'll all wade around in this milieu of these images, and I mean, if I see one more weeping eagle, I'm going to throw up,
Well, I told my wife when Jimmy Buffett died, I said to my wife, I said, Kathy, watch, someone's going to do a weeping parrot. And I'm resisting drawing a weeping parrot. And I did. And someone who I actually really respect did a weeping parrot, but I did something completely different. Thank you.
No, he did a beautiful drawing. I just remember the sunset, because this guy is
that was
master at Photoshop, and I mean, you're talking about technique earlier, just very quickly. He draws all his stuff on a tablet. And Rob and I are elderly, so we're still doing brush and ink and scanning it in through Photoshop.
Wow.
See, he just held up his thing. Go back to that. I mean, it's an astonishing thing how he does this.
Well,
and I want, look, I'm close to death. My career's, but I ain't gonna learn that stuff, but there's Steve Sack is great at this. He's a terrific cartoonist out of Minneapolis who won a Pulitzer. Nick Anderson, Pulitzer winner. He does 2 Wacom tablets. And Rob and I are kind of in the Stone Age, but you know what? I can control my lettering better and my cross hatching better. Yeah. To me, I'm not talking about you, Breen, but just, we're antiquarians. I mean, we're using 13th century technology to do these cartoons.
Hey, Rob, it occurs to me, like, I think I'm a pretty decent idea person for what you do for a living, but I can't draw a damn thing. Mm-hmm. You got to have both skill sets. You've got to be able to, I don't know what the proper way to describe, sketch, draw, present, and you need to be a unique thinker.
Yeah. I remember I ended up going to art school and getting a master's in painting, but, I haven't really done a lot of painting since then. But I remember telling my professor that I had an internship at the Pittsburgh Press, which is the paper I started at. And he thought I was working in the art department. He was like, "Oh, you mean like doing illustrations for the paper?" And I said, "No, I'm going to do editorial cartoons." And at first he looked very disappointed. Like, what have I been spending all this time on you for? But then later he kind of said, "You know what? It's great because it combines art, humor, and journalism. 3 things that are, any one of those things would be great, but and I think that's kind of what I like about it. It's sort of like stand-up. You're writing stand-up comedy on one hand, but you're also investigating stories, like trying to almost like writing an opinion piece for a newspaper. And then the artwork is the, the final piece. And it is kind of, it does make it a very unique profession. And that's probably why there are so few of us doing it. But 3 of us are doing it for you.
Yes.
I'm really appreciative. We've already overstayed by 15 minutes how long I told the audience we would be here. By the way, those who are tuned in and watching in real time, Like and subscribe, like and subscribe, like and subscribe. Jack Oman, Rob Rogers, Steve Breen, I really appreciate you. By the way, I appreciate you even when I don't agree with, you know, what the view is that you're expressing. Like, it matters not to me what you're saying. I'd be less than honest if I didn't say, I hope in the end, over the span of, I don't know, a week or a month, that we're offending everybody. Like, that's my objective, just to be an equal opportunity offender. But such is my respect for each of you that you might say something visually that I disagree with, and I still have to say, that is pretty good. That is really cool. So this is wonderful for me, for the audience. I think we're building something here. I hope that we are. It is a total passion project for me. I meant what I said at the outset. I'm in this for the right reasons. I want people to mix up their media diet. Get out of your bunker, get out of your silo, and sample all opinions. So I'm going to leave and go dutifully select 20 links for tomorrow, and look forward to tomorrow's editorial cartoon, and, you know, keep moving. But this is really fun. Thank you for allowing me to intrude on all of your evenings. And I've seen the comments. People are loving it. They're just loving it. So thank you. And let's keep doing it. Okay.
God bless you, man. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you.
Well,
Okay,
Michael,
Jack, Steve,
Thank
Rob. Hey, by the way, we have to do this in person. Like, I can
Yeah.
see this with an open bar, and we're on the same stage, and we have more time. There could be smoking involved. It could be a wonderful thing.
Why
big
don't we do it
whiteboard.
for the election next year? You know, like get you know, one of those campaign stops. We could all show up and.
Oh my God, I
that would be
love the
great.
idea.
Well,
All
I'll
right.
tell you what, I'm dying to fish southern Pennsylvania. I got a guide in Perry County, so like, let me know when you want me to come down.
Hey, by the way, I should say, and Jack is much more skillful than I am. My golf and my fly fishing have something in common, and that is I suck at both, but I really enjoy each. I really enjoy each. And among the credentials of Jack Oman is that he's like a fly fishing expert and writes on the subject. And I think that's really cool as well. By the way, Jack, I have a fishing hole in the Poconos where I'd be privileged to take you. So when you come back home to these parts, let's do that.
I'd love it.
Okay. Good night, gentlemen. Thank you for being
Thank you.
here. Thank you, Creative Outfit. Thank you, Parks Casino. Thank you, Dr. Marty. Thank you, my team. I'll see you all on radio tomorrow.